kind of guy who will love you all over. And you're just the kind of girl who make love undercover. I'm just the kind of guy who will love you all over. And you're just the kind of girl who could watch me keel over. I wanna be your number one. The tide is high, but I hold it on. I wanna be your number one.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. I am MD. We're going to talk about the 2020. It's been a while since the last time we talked about it. Actually, the last time was when we talk about Mayor de Blasio credential. I believe he was so far, anyway, he's the last one who has joined the race, the 2020 race, in the hope of becoming, the song that you just heard, I Want to Be Your Number One. Actually, that song was picked exclusively for the 2020 presidential election. And every time we talk about the race, candidate fighting to become number one, obviously, figured it's a perfect song for the occasion. So I was trying to sing along. I guess I am not going to the Grammys, obviously, it's pretty clear at this point, or there is still a possibility for me. I have to take a few lessons, so we'll see. I hope you're having a good day, hopefully. If not, there is hope, because my aunt always, she's a nun. She used to, but I'm not sure. I heard her say it the past couple of decades, that as long as one is alive, there is hope. Well, there is no wisdom in the saying, but every time you're in that position where you feel that things are not going right, then there is always hope. Now, what is making noise? As you're probably already aware, we try to pick a few items in the news and talk about, but it's not anything that you probably most likely already aware of. But some of those items, we comment on them because they have a little bit more, there is a little bit more interest in terms of what that particular piece of news means. Or sometimes it could be just entertainment, it could be just talking about celebrity, like we have today. At least one celebrity that we will feature before we move on to talking about the 2020 presidential race. This is the Fourth Branch program, which is we construe as a mantra that the place for common sense, and we don't say just to sound big or to sounds better than everybody else, but rather because we try to look at everything through the prism of common sense. Now, we heard the expression that common sense is like, the expression itself should tell you everybody should have it, at least most everybody. But it is not so. In fact, I am fairly certain that I read that common sense is so rare that it should be considered a superpower. So now what we mean when we say we look at everything through the prism of common sense, especially when it comes to politics, then that means At times, Group A will agree with what we say, and Group B will completely disagree and call us biased. And also, that will change, where Group B will disagree, will agree with us, and Group A will call us completely biased. But regardless of how this dance is being done, because most people are very much inclined to call anyone biased whenever the person says something that doesn't corroborate or that they do not agree with. So if you do not agree with something, you call it bias. But the way we look at everything, yes, as human beings, we expect to be biased, but we try to control that bias. In other words, we may say something, but we try as much as possible to bring it as close as possible to common sense, to logic, and whenever necessary and possible, we also try to bring the facts behind it, behind what we say. So if we're talking about facts, there is no argument whether you agree with it or not, whether you call us biased or not is totally irrelevant, because no one can argue with facts. So having said that, that's pretty much really what this program is about. Now, we do have an objective, which is the ultimate objective actually, is to perfect the union. Now, I know it is a very tall order. It is possible, it can be achieved. There is one major stumbling block we have identified, preventing that, or at least slowing that down. It's called ignorance. Yes, you heard correctly, because most everything in life, now I am a very curious person in terms of knowledge. I'm always acquiring knowledge. In fact, I think someone may have mentioned to me that I am a lifetime student. Because of that, of course, most of what I bring to the table in this conversation is usually researching different aspects, different topics, and it really varies a lot. Health, science, technology, sports, and so on. Once it becomes necessary to delve into those type of subject, then I will spend a great deal of time researching and finding the facts, the history, the truth behind what I ought to talk about. Now, having said that, when we talk about politics, we know how difficult it is to get anything across, especially that each individual, especially those who are fanatics, not necessarily because of belonging to a political party, because in my lifetime I tend to be either a Democrat or a Republican or neither, because of the position that I take in in various issues. So and a lot of people are that way in a sense, but when it comes to acting, executing some action in order to prove something, now that when the most difficult aspect of life shows up. As such, you will notice that whenever we talk about things of politics, that people quit, people walk away. Some people say, can't pay attention to that guy, because obviously that means I'm not saying things that corroborate what you're feeling, your story. And this is not the purpose of the forefront, is to remove ignorance. Now, what that means is, if the idea is to perfect the union, or it is an idea that is shared, then learning is a very big part of it. Now, we also acknowledge that there are people who simply are not interested in learning. We know that the President of the United States is one such individual. So we know that there are plenty of people, as far as learning what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, they don't care, because as far as they're concerned, they set in their ways, and nothing is going to change that no matter what. Earlier, I mentioned that there are two types of fools in the world: those who cannot change and those who will not change. I'm not sure there is such a big difference, but there is, in my mind anyway, even from a philosophical analysis, that those who cannot change are hopeless. Those who will not change are simply ignorant, stupid, stubborn, but maybe there is a possibility that those people can see the light and can become better people. But those who cannot change, like Donald Trump, there is absolutely nothing you can do about that. Now, we know Donald Trump cannot change because after you spend most of your life a certain way, as you can tell, during the presidency of the 2016 presidency, everybody thought that his language, his ways, his mannerism, his vulgarity, all that will stop at the end of the election. And it has gotten worse. So that was not a surprise for me anyway, because this is a human thing that you cannot spend 60, 70 years of your life being a certain way and then wake up one day and become a completely different person. So that was not expected that Donald Trump was going to be a better individual. In fact, power corrupts people. From not having much to having higher power, if you like, then you could not expect that individual to become any better. So the 2020 presidential election is not, in fact, there is one term, I will bring that forth shortly, that to show the importance of the 2020 presidential election. We'll come right back to talk about that in a short second. Live from New York City, at the top of the hour, every weekday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. The Fourth French presents discussions, debates, commentaries on social, political issues, current events, sports, entertainment, religion, education, science, and every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. for a full presentation on controversial issues such as abortion, homosexuality, war on blacks. Are Republicans dumber than Democrats? Information which might irritate you, make you cry, make you laugh, but above all, will make you smarter. Join us every time. It is the right thing to do. It is the only way to keep your sanity in a world of chaos, hypocrisy, immorality, and deception. Welcome to Common Sense. Once again, welcome. I hope you're having a good day. If not, take heart. Things will get better no matter what. Now, before we talk about the 2020 detail of what's going on, let's take a look at something that happened a year ago. Remember the shooting in Florida, Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida? Well, it was a big thing. A lunatic entered the school with automatic weapon and start shooting indiscriminately. Now, there was an officer, well, we'll show you shortly, there was an officer that was nearby. Now, that officer did not even bother to go inside trying to assess the situation and confront the gunman. He stayed outside for those kids to be massacred. Now, when I read that, actually that's a year ago, when I heard about that, I was really extremely outraged. Outraged mostly because most of those police officers, they don't have any problem shooting unarmed individuals on the street. They don't have any such problem or drawing their weapon and shooting unarmed people. But here was a situation in which it could have made a difference in life. That guy, he could have made a difference in life, but instead he stayed outside, let the children being massacred, murdered inside. But I guarantee you, if you start looking into his past, you'll find out that he's done a lot of things that's bad to civilians. Those are the kind of people that we're calling hero, people who protect people on the street. Me, as I mentioned, and I made no bone about it, and you're probably well aware of that fact, that my label for most police officers are criminals with badges, because they are allowed, or they are enabled, or they condone the action when they kill unarmed individuals. They don't have any bones doing that, especially if it's black. They always get away with it. And then here is a situation where you have kids under fire being massacred, being murdered, and that fool stood outside, didn't even bother. Now he's arrested for dereliction of his duty, obviously. Not sure if that's gonna do much except set an example for the others, but as far as he's concerned, he wasn't gonna try to do what presumably he joined the force to do, which is to serve and protect. That's why me personally, I have my level of doubt for any police officer, which means the way that I look at any police officer on the street is, first, I see that individual as a criminal first, not as a police officer first. Until that can be proven, I can be proven wrong. Because as far as I have seen so far in this United States of America, they more likely, especially black, are more likely to be killed by a police officer than any other, losing their life in any other way. So maybe for the white community it's different, but for blacks, police officers are no protectors in this country. So here's that fool, Scott Peterson, that is his name, that stood outside when he could have tried to engage the gunman and save a few lives. 17 kids were killed and 17 others injured. He stood outside and he lied about it afterwards. Well, what's no? I already told you that. If you've been watching this program, you should already know that police officers, whenever they commit a crime or do something wrong, they always lie about it. You can take that to the bank. They will never tell you what exactly they did that's wrong. Never. In fact, we have several different videos of such. They lie until the video show emerge. Police officers in the United States of America are encouraged to kill civilians. That's as simple as that. In this program, I've been presenting it to you, and I gave you example in 2017 in London, a city that's comparable to most major cities in America, New York, Chicago, etc. For 2017, they had only one civilian that fell victim of law enforcement. Here in the United States, we had 1,600. So those guys, those police officers who are out there to serve and protect, we condone their action when they kill unarmed individuals. There is no excuse. I don't see any excuse of any officer who kill an unarmed individual for the justice system to give that individual a pass. The idea is the common defense is, I was afraid for my life. And the question is, if you're afraid for your life, why would you be in that job? This is the job. If your job, you're so afraid of it that you're killing the very civilian you're supposed to protect, then this is not a job for you. Then you should be doing something completely different. So I hope that fool spend the rest of his life in jail. Well, here's a piece of good news that I'm certain that Democrats want to embrace. According to the Kenya University poll, a poll that just came out, pitting Joe Biden against Donald Trump in Texas, found that Joe Biden would beat Donald Trump 48-44. Now that's not small, because Texas, as we know, is a Republican stronghold. Now, if Joe Biden becomes the nominee for the Democrat Party, it is pretty obvious that Donald Trump will have a serious setback in terms of re-election. Now, there is one thing that I want to address. Of course, this is Joe Biden. Who cannot not know Joe Biden? Now, this is not in reaction to the news, by the way, I just gave you. He just during his campaign, something exciting for him, I guess, and he was expressing this excitement. But in any case, it's a very interesting picture for that kind of news. One thing that I've been hearing over and over and over, and it really actually bothers me to the core. And the reason it bothers me is because the way that the pundit have been framing the upcoming 2020 presidential election is which Democrat can beat Donald Trump. Now I'm paraphrasing because they have different ways of saying it, but the bottom line is that's what they really say. Which Democrat candidate can beat Donald Trump? Now I have a problem with this type of conversation, with this type of expression. This is not a boxing match. It is far from being a boxing match. That's number one. And number two, the seriousness of this coming election should not be framed as a cockfight. The country has been hijacked, its constitution completely destroyed. Our democracy has been eroding. This is not a good conversation. The idea of which candidate would beat Donald Trump, make it sound like a cockfight, make it sound like a boxing match, which means we, the people, are just spectators. But we're not. The individual who sit in the Oval Office impacts our lives in big ways, sometimes for generations to come. Now, I've been saying that the individual in the north, it used to be a time when people at certain job would take the job seriously and not throw out words that could change the dynamic or even the environment. But today, it doesn't matter. They say whatever they want. Whatever comes to their mind, that's what they say. Now, who can beat Donald Trump irks me to the core. We're not looking for an individual to beat Donald Trump. This is not what presidential race is about. And the 2020 is even so important that we cannot bring it down to that level. We're not looking for an individual to beat Donald Trump. What the Democrats need is an individual who can spell out his or her plan for the country that would sound better than what we currently have. A plan that the country can embrace. No matter which aspect of life we're talking about, the country need someone that can understand that the president of the United States is the president for the United States, not for a few people, not for a group of people, but for the citizen of the United States. And the job of the president is to unite, is to give hope to the people of the United States. So the idea of looking for someone to beat Donald Trump, and that's the way this conversation has been framed for many presidential elections now, it's always someone to beat someone. And the expression, you could say it's just an expression. Well, obviously, you can see the kind of damage such expression has been causing to the nation, to the psyche, the psychology of things, to the environment. So, good thing that Joe Biden would win Texas if the election were held today, would win Texas over Donald Trump. Now, I mentioned before, and I'll mention it again, despite all that you're hearing today, there is always this possibility that Donald Trump may exit the presidency before his term is over. So all this hoopla about who is going to beat Donald Trump may be completely irrelevant. But we're watching this very closely, and we will come back to discuss another important aspect of what is going to happen in the next few days in the 2020 presidential election. You are on the Fourth Branch program, the only place for common sense.
After reading several books based on presidents and on Obama specifically, I found that they're typically partisan. The Obama legacy targets the heart of the issue by giving credit to the president where it's due, but definitely coming down hard on Obama on his bigger failures, like his handling of the Syrian crisis.
If you are in college, going to college, you are an educator, a faculty member, or someone with interest in government or politics, The Obama Legacy is definitely a book to read.
My professor recommended The Obama Legacy.
A friend actually recommended The Obama Legacy.
I would highly recommend this book for anyone, whether for academic use or leisure reading.
I would recommend this book to anyone out there searching for an impartial and unbiased look into Barack Obama's tenure as president.
I would definitely recommend this book as a good read for both liberals and conservatives.
Now, here's an interesting piece of news, which is not politics. Worth noted, Jay-Z, remember him? Well, maybe not. Well, Jay-Z is... Who doesn't know Jay-Z? Otherwise, Beyonce's husband. That guy, remember him? Well, he's a rapper too. So he has been making his own success. Now, I must say, when I found out on the celebrity news what just happened, I decided that I'm going to take a few lessons in singing because, well, I'll tell you an interesting thing later. But Jay-Z has just been added to the list of billionaires. Yes, you heard correctly. He just reached the $1 billion threshold. So now Jay-Z is a billionaire, but he's not making news just because he's a billionaire. He's making news because, well, he's the first rapper billionaire. Now, here's the interesting thing about his billion, so which means somehow Jay-Z managed to manage his money properly because he didn't just become a billionaire overnight. Now, in 2009, according to Celebrity News, in 2009, Jay-Z net worth was just $300 million. So he needed a lot of money to become a billionaire. So in 2009, that's, what is it? A decade prior, it was worth $300 million. Now, 3 years later, he's managed to add $475 million. Well, actually, his net worth jumped rather to $475 million. So 3 years, he added $175 million. The year after, in 2013, he was a half billionaire. He had $500 million as net worth. By 2015, he was already making, well, his net worth already got to $600 million mark. But the big jump that we're talking about is between 2015 and 2019. And the reason for that his net worth just skyrocketed, is because of a lot of business venture that, well, he got himself into, and it paid off. Now, we say billionaire, he's not quite yet a billionaire because he's short $70 million. So, which means Jay-Z needs to work really very hard to get those $70 million. But we're certain that by the end of this year, he should manage to have that. Jay-Z was born in Brooklyn, New York in 1969. I guess for the people who live in Brooklyn, this is your chance to meet a billionaire. Jay-Z was one of 4 children. And Jay-Z had not really that good of a life because he was raised exclusively by his mother, or actually all the 4 children, raised by his mother, and the father disappeared from their lives. According to Celebrity News, Jay grew in the Marcy houses, and he moved from school to school. Now, the reason the Marcy houses were mentioned is because, obviously, it's because it wasn't a good place. According to the story, it was a very dangerous place. In fact, according to that report, it looks like soon after Jay graduated, the entire neighborhood, to give you an idea how bad it was, the entire neighborhood had to be shut down. That is really a milestone for Jay to turn his life around and now become a billionaire from someone who started in really very odd circumstances, and now he is a billionaire. Now, the story said that Jay was always interested. By the way, his real name is Sean Carter. Jay was always interested in music. And the story goes that sometime playing music at night, it would wake up the whole family. Needless to say, how upset they were that Jay was doing that. But his mother seems to help in the process, because for his birthday, I don't remember how old he was, but he received a boombox. And that's how Jay started his music career, writing lyrics, freestyling. But by the late 80s, Jay began to make a name for himself around the neighborhood. So Jay's reputation catapulted his fame. In 1995, he co-founded the record company called Rockefeller. Rockefeller. Interesting name. Not Rockefeller, not the Rockefeller in New York, but Rockefeller Records, with Damon Dash and Karen Biggs. The bottom line is, now Jay is a billionaire. He's married to Beyonce, 2002, you recall? And they two worked together a song called R3, Bonnie and Clyde. And that was also the time when Beyonce wrote and sang Crazy in Love. And that's how you like it. Actually, I said that wrong. They didn't get married in 2002, but they met rather in 2002. And they worked together in song Bonnie and Clyde, and as well as Crazy in Love, and that's how you like it. Now, I'm sure if you're a Beyonce fan or a Jay-Z fan, you must have known that Jay-Z made a few appearances during Beyonce's performances. Now, it was not until 2008 that the duo began to date. Now, actually, I said that wrong. They began dating prior to that, but in 2008, they were married. They got married in 2008. Their first child, Blue Ivy, was born January 8th, 2012. Actually, I should remember that date because one of my children was born January 7th. And on June 2017, that's just a couple of years ago, Beyonce gave birth to twins, a daughter named Rumi and a son named Sir. Now, Jay-Z has been making his way towards making more and more and more money, and he seems to be a very savvy businessman. So welcome, Jay-Z, to the League of Billionaires. Now, the 2020 is gonna start really very hot, getting hot, or Interestingly enough, summer is coming too. The first debate, Democrat of course, will take place on January 26th and January 27th. It's a couple of weeks from now. But something is making a lot of news. Now you already know that candidate. We have currently 23 candidates, I believe. They're making the round. They're making the round across the country, crisscrossing the country, and telling the constituent that pick me, I want to be number one, and here's why. I want to be number one. And of course, they're also using the word of the pundit, I'm the only one who can beat Donald Trump. It really bothers me that much. This is not a match. This is not a boxing match. It is a serious, very serious event that impacts our lives as citizens of the country. We are not spectators, although it looks like that's what this has become, because you have people cheering for this group, people cheering for that group. So depending on which group is winning, yay, that group is winning, boo. So that becomes a joke. But it shouldn't be, because it's too important, it's too serious. But anyway, the debate will take place on 26th and 27th in Florida. But although there are 23 candidates, not all 23 may participate in those 2 days of debate, because the DNC has rules and guidelines that say what a candidate, the threshold a candidate has to reach in order to actually be featured on those debates. Now here's the interesting thing. Those are the 13 first candidates. They are the first 13 candidates that threw their hats into the ring. But interestingly enough, as of this conversation we're having, there are 13 candidates who are qualified to be in that debate stage. But not the 13 candidates, not all the individuals you see on your screen are qualified to be on the debate stage. In fact, I think there are a couple of them that may not be in the debate stage. So in other words, among the 13, if there are a couple of them who are not, there are 2 others who are not in that list that would be in the debate stage. Now, according to the story, but here's the interesting thing. Although the debate will take place June 26th and June 27th, 2 nights, those who ought to be qualified to be in the debate have to have to meet the threshold that the DNC set by June 13th. That means next week. Now, here's the interesting thing. As of this conversation we're having, there are a few people that you would expect to be on the debate stage may not be on the debate stage. For instance, remember the famous mayor, New York City Mayor de Blasio, the big mouth, the tall guy? Well, currently he hasn't met the threshold. So which means the debate may take place and you may not see Mayor de Blasio. Now, as I mentioned, currently there are only 13 who are qualified to be on the stage. if that's the case, that means we currently have at least 10 who are not qualified yet. So there is a sprinting, a race to the race. There is a race to a race, because obviously if you don't make the cut, you cannot participate in the first debate. Now, this is not the end of the world, don't get me wrong. That's not the end of the world, but it is a very big deal, because think about it. This is the first time an individual who has declared his or her intention to be the nominee for the Democrat Party. Now, this is the first opportunity to prove to those who are looking for someone to beat Donald Trump, for that individual to present his ideas, her ideas, and to show that he or she has the stuff. Now, if you cannot make the cut, then that means you don't have the stage, because nationwide, people are going to be, especially those who are interested in the primaries, they're going to be watching to see who they should support. Now, currently, there are a few candidates that already have a lot of wind behind them. You have Joe Biden, you have Pete Buttigieg, you have Elizabeth Warren, you have Kamala Harris, Cory Booker. Of course, you have a few small other candidates, well, small by popularity and so on. But a debate can change all that. Can Joe Biden hold the number one spot? Bernie Sanders, I forgot. How could I? The debate may change all that. Because you may recall in 2016, Bernie Sanders was a blip. In fact, in the beginning, the Clinton campaign completely ignored Bernie Sanders, because there is no way Bernie Sanders could represent any kind of threat to Mrs. Clinton. And yet, he was the last man standing, actually giving a big challenge to Mrs. Clinton. So you never know how things are going. Now, here at the forefront, we haven't said anything yet as to what we see, because we always wait for the first debate, and from that point on, we will tell you who is going to last, who is not going to last, who is going to stick around, who is going to exit. And of course, we're going to be watching Iowa pretty closely also to see exactly who will make the cut. We have a bad habit of knowing who is going to make it to the end. Bad habit, but we've been doing that, and we've been really pretty darn successful doing it. We're not psychic, but we will be able to sift through the noise, because most people wait to the end in order to figure out who's going to make it. But we take the opportunity from the very onset to say where things are going. So of course, by the time people are saying we think so and so, we've already said that for a month ahead of time. We predicted Hillary Clinton in 2016, 1 year before time. We predicted Donald Trump, I believe, 4 months before time, and so on and so forth. So we are really pretty confident that we will be able to sift through the noise and tell you exactly whom to watch for, because as far as the 2020, it's important, and we should all get involved, because our system of democracy is in serious jeopardy. I am Mark Duchesne, and that was it for the day. I hope to see you again tomorrow, in which we will continue the conversation about, well, something else. That was an update through the prism of common sense. Join us again tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. for a full presentation. I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program, The Place for Common Sense. Send us comments, criticism, suggestion, or simply let us know how we're doing. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful afternoon. See you next time. The Fourth Branch Podcast is brought to you in collaboration with the People Branch publication, which can be found on the People Branch website, located at peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org website, in which you will find a number of very interesting articles. My name is Mike Duchesne, MD for short. I hope you have a great afternoon or a great evening, whichever it happens to be. Hopefully you can join me again next time for another interesting episode of this podcast. That was the Fourth Branch, live from New York. Good day.
kind of guy who will love you all over. And you're just the kind of girl who make love undercover. I'm just the kind of guy who will love you all over. And you're just the kind of girl who could watch me keel over. But I wanna be your number one. The tide is high, but